How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Mojo Group. Mike here. Today, we're going to talk about some of the discrepancies we are having in our training environment, training of pilots. So, I help pilots get their license and or get to the airlines at lookupflightacademy.com. And I want to have this conversation publicly because we're having it privately. And also in correlation to what we see happening in the aviation industry in general. Right? We want to train solid pilots. We want to get excellent product out there. And more importantly, we want to train pilots who are more safety oriented. And I can't tell you how many pilots have just come out of the woodworks the last 3 years. We have a shortage, or we had a shortage, wherever your report is coming from. The fact is, a lot more pilots are getting trained as we speak right now. And I think that some things are being lost within the training environment. And that's what I want to talk about today. Okay. Again, these are conversations that's happening at Lookup Flight Academy, and some of the things that we've implemented. For example, we're having training for our flight instructors. So not just our students are training, but we're also having classes for the instructors because we want them to pass down good behaviors. So to kind of counter this debate and also get a proper solution, we've already brought in some airline pilots, and we talked to some of our friends within the airlines as well, and also within the military. Something that I've personally realized with military pilots is that their training is top notch, right? If you go the military route and or you get lucky enough to fly a fighter jet, you're gonna get some of the best training ever. I think it's second to none, that the type of pilot training you get in the military. Precision, everything is on point. So we're recruiting some of that knowledge to add to our training here. And in 3 years of being in this industry, these are some of the things that I've noticed. And I'll talk about what we've gotten from our airline pilots so far. One is to train civilian or GA pilot is a different ball game than training airline pilots. And what I see, even we had to make this adjustment, is that obviously we're excited about flying people and getting them to their dream, but also with GA pilots, some things doesn't have to be perfect, right? We obviously tailor safety across the board. We tailor our maneuvers and how we teach everyone across the board. But what you'll find is, for example, the guy or girl who is finally able to afford flight training, or they want to accomplish this dream and they just want to fly their own airplane, things are more flexible, right? They may show up 1 or 2 days out of the week, or they may take a couple of weeks off, come back. And so you have to make adjustment for that. Whereas with our commercial pilot or students in the commercial program, their training is more like going to college. They're there every day, at least we want them to. And most of our students are full-time students is that way. You come to class every day, you take ground lessons every day, and you fly every single day. And so your training is moving along much quicker, but you also get more in-depth training compared to the guy or girl who comes in and out. Now, I say all that to say this. In talking to our airline folks, this is one of the key things that jumped out. We have a safety standard personnel now, and what they've told us is this. Hey, I've been flying for a while. Someone with military background now fly for Delta. And they tell us, well, some of the first officers that are sitting right next to me, they're not cutting it. For example, visual scanning. Now, if you're new to the pilot world of flight training, visual scanning, when you start your journey as a pilot, the first foundation thing that you learn is you get trained as a VFR pilot, which means visual flight rules. Self-explanatory. You're flying that airplane by referencing visually what's outside. Okay, so your eyes most of the time should be outside, and whatever control or inputs that you're putting in the cockpit should be reflective outside of the airplane. But our airline pilot tells us, well, I see a lot of first officers who can't even scan outside. They're always inside of the cockpit. Now, given once you get to commercial or you get to the airlines, a lot of your flight are going to be instrument, meaning you're referencing inside the cockpit. But there's also plenty flights where it's VFR. But it seems that that's something some of our pilots are lacking. And from a training standpoint, so for example, you go on lookupflightacademy.com or you come in for a tour, we always praise and present our wonderful glass cockpit, right? And two reasons why we fly glass is because one, that's generally what you're going to be flying when you get to a Delta American, but also it's more modern. It makes life easier for you in terms of getting all your data. But some slight opposite effect of that is you now have some students who train with glass and just focus on that glass on the inside rather than looking outside. And this is, again, something that we've talked about privately. And so if that's you or you run a school that's happening, that's something you probably want to tackle early on. Now, just because you have a glass cockpit doesn't mean that the students shouldn't have the proper and adequate skill to be able to scan outside of the airplane. I believe that's a behavior that needs to be taught and focused on. Now, as you advance in your training, so the first training you get is your private pilot, and then you move on to get your instrument ready. Now, when you get to instrument, you reference more of your data. So you're looking more inside, and an instrument rating allows you also to fly in clouds, or fly in weather where your visual reference is limited. But even so, you should still have the foundation of knowing how to fly the airplane safely by looking outside. And so with getting much of that feedback, one of the things we did, believe it or not, was we brought in an airplane with analog. I never thought I would do that in my life because I'm so partial to glass. I think it's the way to go. It's what we're all going to be flying in the future. But one of the reasons why we even consider having analog cockpit is to help hone in this behavior of allowing the students and teaching them how to properly scan and fly the airplane safely by looking outside. Now, as they advance, we put them in a glass cockpit, and obviously they know how to use the equipment, the avionics, and so on and so forth. But again, this is a conversation that's happening privately, and the way we're combating it is that teaching some analog, teaching the basic foundation, repeating that to them is fly the airplane by looking outside. And keep in mind, when you're doing maneuvers and whatnot, those are all visual reference. You're allowed to look at your data on your screen, but look outside. See what that airplane is doing every time you input something, right? And so we're now adding some buffer to our training program. So we want to own in on this and teach our students good behaviors early on. So by the time they get to the airline, whether through the training they receive there or when they're actually flying 200 people in the back seat, we want them to be safe and to know what to do. Because when you're so used to just referencing your instrument and you have power failure or you lose your electric power, then you're going to be in trouble if you don't know how to fly the airplane visually by looking outside. So those are some of the things that we're thinking about, that we're discussing, and of course, making sure we add to our program. And depending on how this video does, I'm going to share more private conversations with you. I shouldn't really be doing this because it may shine a light on flight training schools, but I think having safer and better pilots out there is the goal. So it's not about, this is no marketing or a bad light shine on flight schools. It's just we all have to do better, and we need these feedback to produce much better pilots. Okay, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to get started on your pilot journey, look us up, lookupflightacademy.com. I'll be there to shake your hands in person, and we'll take you for a demo flight. Again, my name is Mike, and I will catch you on the next video. Peace.